Hi, I'm Caden, here with my brother,
Cal,
and you're watching Eating W's.
eat the W.
That's a W. Let's eat one. Let's eat one. That's a W.
On today's episode of Eating W's, we have our first recap of the 2024 NFL season with none other than our NFL Week 1 recap. Before we jump into those games, just a couple very small tidbits of news. One big signing was the Cowboys signing quarterback Dak Prescott to a 4-year, $240 million contract, making him now the highest paid player in the NFL at $60 million a year, which is just absolutely crazy to think about considering he's 31 or 32-year-old quarterback, but good for him to get paid. And then also in some sad news on the flip side of things, the Giants defensive tackle Dexter Lawrence was put on injured reserve and will miss the entire season. He didn't play huge against the Vikings, and the Vikings kind of stomped him, but nonetheless, he is a really good player. And if you see a starter go down at any point for the season, it always sucks to see. So now we will jump from the news into the games. Just a quick kind of rundown of how we will do the games and recaps this season. We, of course, will talk about the Packers and Vikings every week. Then the other three games we talk about will be what we marked as the game of the week in the prior week predictions, as well as one game that we both pick, or each pick, I should say, outside of that. So we will get rolling into it now with none other than the Green Bay Packers heading to Brazil to take on Philadelphia in the first Brazil game in the NFL and falling by a score of 29-34.
Yeah, it was a real back and forth matchup, and it was really unfortunate for the Packers. Early on, they could have really pulled away, but they got short fields and ended up with short field goals. And when you're playing top teams in the NFL, you got to score touchdowns when you get those short fields. It's just points are nice, but the 6 and the 7 make a lot more difference than when you can only get 3. And it's almost a win for the defense when the defense forces them to get a field goal when they get a short field. So if they could have capitalized, maybe this would be a different score, but they only got field goals early on. And then really it was a nice play from both the Eagles and the Packers, both trading blows and touchdowns. Jaden Reed is emerging as a star for the Packers, and I called that early on. I said he's going to be used like Deebo Samuel, and he was used like Deebo Samuel. So it's kind of funny. That was more realistic than I thought it was going to be. So when they got him on that reverse or that sweep, it's nice. Just like Deebo, I was like, oh man,
he had that nice weave, back and forth.
It was very reminiscent of him. So I like the way that the receivers are playing. Christian Watson caught a touchdown, so that's nice for him. We have multiple weapons. I think every week someone else is going to kind of jump out on the stat sheet, whether that's Bo Melton, Romeo Doubs, or Dontavion Wicks. Now, one bad thing about that is that Jordan Love got hurt, and he didn't get the season-ending injury. It's an MCL sprain, which is anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. Now, Matt LaFleur came out this week and said that he's not naming this, or he said that Malik Willis will start if Jordan Love isn't ready, which leaves the door open for Jordan Love to be ready this week, which I can't believe. I think it's just mind games. It's most likely that Malik Willis is going to be the starting quarterback for the next couple of weeks. And with the strong running game with Josh Jacobs showing up, I believe we have a chance, but we'll have to see. As far as this game goes, hats off to the Eagles. They were able to pull away in the second half with big touchdowns from A.J. Brown and a dominant performance from Saquon Barkley, who got 3 touchdowns. And I said if we held them under 175, which we did, but I didn't account for holding them under 3 touchdowns. So that was a difference maker there. And, hey, I said he could take over the game, and he did it.
Yeah, that first receiving touchdown was pretty, too. He got both feet down right against the out-of-bounds line. That was awesome. But yeah, if they rush Jordan Love out of this injury, that is the absolute worst thing they can do. I mean, you guys have a cupcake schedule the first half of the season. It is by far your easier half of the season. So I don't know why you would rush him out and risk a re-injury like that, but they're going to make their decision, and of course they're not going to listen to what I say, so we'll see what they do. But yeah, coming back to this game, of course, the MVP of this game has got to be Saquon Barkley. In his first game in that Philadelphia Eagles uniform, he absolutely dominated. He just picked apart the run defense all night. The offensive line, of course, looked really good. That was my big question mark heading into it, is I didn't think they were going to be bad by any means, how truly elite can they be after losing Jason Kelce, after having him for so long being the head of that line? But I think Landon Dickerson stepped in really well. Actually, was it Dickerson or Juergens?
I think it was Juergens.
One of them was center and one of them was right guard, like they have been running. So I think you're right, actually. I think Cam Juergens stepped in as center, who was just a rookie last year out of Nebraska. But nonetheless, still, the center play was really good. When you're learning behind somebody like Jason Kelce, of course you're going to come out there and be the best center that you can be. But overall, that offensive line looked really good, and overall the Eagles just looked really good. Last year, the Eagles came out really hot too, and then really started to sputter off towards the second half of the season. So that's a whole ways away at this point, 2-3 months before we really start getting the real playoff contention. But I'll be interested to see what they do there. And the Packers were the opposite. They started cold, looking bad with a lot of losses, and they got hot towards the second half of the season. So again, they start off cold here. Let's see if history repeats itself in both of these teams. But for now, the Eagles pick up the win. Moving on to the second game, which is, of course, the Minnesota Vikings heading to New York to take on the Giants. And in an absolutely dominant performance, winning by a score of 28-6, holding the Giants to only 2 field goals and 0 touchdowns. There are so many big winners from this game. Biggest winner, in my opinion, is that edge rusher rotation. They were going against not a elite offensive line by any means, but pretty damn good bookend tackles there for the New York Giants. That's probably offensive and defensive line are definitely the 2 strongest points of the New York Giants. And our edge rushing rotation, filled with a bunch of newbies like Dallas Turner, Andrew Van Ginkel, and Jonathan Grenard, did awesome. Andrew Van Ginkel's, of course, was highlighted by that awesome pick 6 that he had where he read the screen. Dallas Turner picked up his first sack of his NFL career, which is always cool to see. And Jonathan Grenard, if you look at the stat sheet, actually had all zeros across the board. No recorded tackles or recorded anything. But if you look at the film of things, he was involved on every play. He got so many quarterback pressures. He was eating up blocks and opening up those lanes for other players to get those sacks and tackles that they got. So that's awesome to see. Harrison Phillips had a pretty damn good game and was rewarded with a extension recently, just this morning, if I'm not mistaken. We are recording this on Tuesday the 10th, so good for him. And then the other big winner of this game, just as I said how the Giants really thrive on the offensive and defensive line, easily my second biggest winner of this game is the Vikings offensive line. Because if you want to talk about the real worry I had, and I even mentioned it last week during the preview, is how that elite defensive line of the Giants was going to fare or dominate. I was hoping didn't happen against our offensive line, but our offensive line flipped the script on them and dominated them. Christian Darrisaw looked so good, absolutely shut down Brian Burns in his New York debut. Brian O'Neill continued to be a beast on the other side with Kayvon Thibodeau. The interior offensive line with Bradbury and Ed O'Neill is still a little shaky, but they survived, which is really all that you could ask for at the end of the day. So overall, there's a ton of different little small things that we could point out with this game. But I think it was a true team win, and I am so excited to see what Sam Darnold can do continuing on, if he can continue to get this elite time that he was getting in the pocket.
Yeah, Sam Darnold really had quite a good game, I must say. He started off 12 for 12, perfect on the passer rating, and if not for an interception late in the game, he might have had a perfect passer rating.
Yeah, he did really well. He looked good.
Yeah.
Like more than just like game manager good, he looked good.
Yeah, he had that nice touchdown to Justin Jefferson. So he looked like he could definitely play the part in Minnesota. We'll have to see. It was against a more cupcake opponent. Now, like I said, that defensive line was pretty ferocious, but the rest of that team defense is pretty young. So we'll have to see how he does against more top-tier units. If he starts seeing ghosts again, like he used to in New York.
I forgot that was him. Poor guy.
So, but other than that, Aaron Jones, he had a nice game, 90 yards and a touchdown. So he actually outperformed Josh Jacobs. If you want to, compare those two, we'll probably be comparing them all season long. So we'll have to see how well they end up doing. But round 1 goes to Aaron Jones. He had a nice game, and those fumbles came back for the Vikings early on. C.J. Ham had a fumble, and that was the trouble last year. And the Giants had a chance to pull away, but like I said, they ended up with a short field goal on a short field, so they didn't score that touchdown, which might have changed momentum. So we'll have to see if that's the theme of this year, is getting those touchdowns on short fields, or teams that end up with short field goals lose the game more often.
Yeah, definitely. Completely agree. Another unit that did really well that I forgot to mention was the pretty much brand new across the board cornerback room and secondary in general, with Cam Bynum and Harrison Smith as well back there at safety. But they didn't have a very hard test this week. So next week when we go against the 49ers, that's where we'll find out how the secondary really is going to be. But now that we're done fanboying about our teams, we'll start flying through these a little more, starting with the game we marked as game of the week last week, and the Arizona Cardinals heading to Buffalo to take on the Bills, and losing in a close game in a thriller by a score of 28-34. They did have the ball at the end. They had a chance. They were not only had the ball, but were in Buffalo territory, just barely. I think they were around the Buffalo 40, but got themselves in a 4th and 7. It wasn't really a panic. It was more of true good pass rush by the Bills, but Kyler Murray kind of got rushed out of the pocket and rushed out in general and just chucked one deep a little bit. And it was almost completed. It was pretty damn close, but nonetheless, it fell incomplete, and the Bills were able to pick up the win. But I, of course, want to talk about this one because I've become a practical Cardinals fan at this point this offseason. Really like what they've been doing. I think that they looked really well. I mean, you're going against a true Super Bowl contender, whether they have the receiving core that they had last year, whether they have the secondary that they had last year. This Buffalo Bills team is still a contender pretty much solely off the back of Josh Allen, but they got some other really good players as well. So the fact that they were able to go on the road week 1 all the way pretty much across the United States and put up that good of a game against the Bills, I think is a win really in their books, because everyone was counting them out. Everyone thought that they had no chance in this game, and they showed that they did by dominating at the start. But no one can stop Hero Ball at the end of the day.
No.
But one interesting part about this game was Marvin Harrison only getting 1 reception for 4 yards in his debut. I think that, of course, changes. I don't think by any means Marvin Harrison is going to be a bust. I think he maybe just had a rusty first game, or he's still finding his way in that offense that's not very wide receiver heavy. But when guys like Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson are playing like they did, they continued their rising success from last year. You do kind of got to, it's not just handed to you like it seemed like it was going to be for Marvin Harrison's, but I think he turns around and finds his place.
Yeah, not every player hits a home run at their first at bat. So we'll see how well he really does turn out. I think it'll turn around for him. One thing I really like that happened in this game is the kickoff return for a touchdown by DJ Dallas. The first dynamic kick return touchdown. It helped even the score against the Bills in the third quarter after a Josh Allen touchdown. And it was really exciting to see, and I hope that there's more kickoff return touchdowns this year with this dynamic kick return. So hopefully we'll see more of that. But one other thing is that Josh Allen, again, like I said, had to put on the cape and play his hero ball early on in this game. Well, late in the game, but early on in the season. I said last week that don't be surprised if he's got to put it on and play hero ball to win this game. So, and he did. He was responsible for 4 of the 5 touchdowns, or 4 touchdowns. The other 2 were field goals. So he was responsible for almost all the scores for the Bills, except for the field goals. So We'll see how long this lasts, if he can continue to do this all season long, but it was an exciting game, and the Cardinals almost pulled off the upset.
He quite literally flew into the end zone when he did that leap and got the touchdown. It was the definition of hero ball when he got that touchdown. It was so funny. So now moving on to what Callan marked as his game of the week, or his pick to talk about this week. We have an AFC matchup with the Jacksonville Jaguars heading to Miami to take on the Dolphins. And the Dolphins pick up a win in their home opener by a score of 20-17.
Yeah, and the Dolphins had to come back late in this one with touchdowns to Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane not late in the game, but not early on in the second and third quarter. The Jaguars really got off to a fast start, and that's because I think Tyreek Hill was a little bit shook when you talk about fast starts. He was pulled over and arrested early on in the morning before the game. And it's really been a big deal, the way he was treated. It was bad. And it was a bad deal for that and a bad look for the police. But either way, that's still got to shake you a little bit when you got arrested early in the morning on your way, basically on your way to work.
Pretty much.
So Tyreek Hill got off to a slow start, but he got his revenge in the third quarter with an 80-yard touchdown pass or reception and a celebration where he pretended to put on handcuffs. So I like that. I like that he can make fun of himself a little bit here. But as far as the Dolphins go, it was a really good performance by them. They have a short week this week against the Bills. So we'll see how they answer from having to come back from early deficit in this week. And hats off to the Jaguars and Trevor Lawrence. He tried his best. He looks like he's going to play the part and be that next big star quarterback, but it just wasn't enough to overcome that track team that is the Dolphins.
I didn't know he did a handcuff celebration.
Yeah, he had a handcuff celebration.
That is pretty savage to get detained Sunday morning and catch an 80-yard touchdown Sunday afternoon. I'll give him that. But yeah, this game, I didn't get to watch much of it, just kind of caught it on NFL Red Zone a little bit. But it looked like it was over before it even started, the way the Jags came out of the gate. If I'm not mistaken, it was 17-0 pretty early into the second quarter. And it was like, man, the Dolphins just look bad. I mean, it looked like the Jags were just going to keep running with it. And then the Dolphins got their first touchdown. Then they came out from half and got another touchdown. And the defense started stepping up a lot more and actually shut out the Jags in the second half. And the Dolphins just kind of chipped at it and finally got that lead. And by the time the dust had settled and it was all said and done, it was able to keep that lead and get that 20-17 win. Like I said, didn't see a ton of this game, so don't have a ton of it to talk about. But nonetheless, the things that I did catch looked really good. The Dolphins are still just a track team. I mean, it was 3 and out, 80-yard play, 3 and out, 3 and out, 60-yard play by Jalen Waddle. It was just, it's so funny to watch their offense because that's kind of how it goes. But Devon Achane looked really good as well, and overall just seemed like a fun game to watch. Might have to go back and watch some highlights and see what all I missed. But now moving on to our final game we're going to talk about this week. And my pick for this week, we have the Sunday night football game of the Los Angeles Rams versus the Detroit Lions in Detroit. And Detroit picks up a win in an overtime thriller by a score of 26-20. Again, I didn't get to catch all of this game. I actually missed most of the first half, but I don't think I really missed much in the first half. It seemed like this game really happened in the second half, and overtime is when it got exciting. And what I really want to talk about in this game is just Matthew Stafford. I mean, Callan talks about hero ball with Josh Allen all the time, and Josh Allen's a little more true hero ball because it is just him. But Matthew Stafford has his own cape. He has his own little brand of hero ball that he plays, just off of being such a competitor and being so smart with the ball. Some of the things that he's able to do to kind of trick defenses and his eye discipline of how he doesn't even quite do no-look passes, but he almost does side-eye passes every time he throws. His eyes are just off track enough to keep the safety going one way when the receiver's actually over here. And just the small things like that he does each and every play are so impressive. The big kind of sad or bad a headline of this game was, of course, Puka Nacua leaving the game early with a knee injury, and he actually ended up going on injury reserve and will miss at least 4 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is more of like an early season precaution injury reserve, and he'll probably come back pretty close to 100% after that 4 weeks. But I think our mic just died. Sorry about that quick break. We just recently got some new microphones and did not know that you had to charge this little piece of the microphone. So our mics died right there. You could probably see me kind of looking at my mic and looking at Callan's mic because this thing was blinking at us the whole time. And I was like, I don't know what it means, but a blinking red light is never a good thing. And then all of a sudden it went black. No more blinking, no more light at all. So we knew that was probably what happened. But kind of listened to it a little bit, and it seemed like the audio was still at least decent from just my phone. So might sound a little weird for this episode, but we'll get this thing charged up and make sure we're good to go next episode, or next week rather. But what I was saying is I think it was more of a precaution for Puka Nacua's injury, and I think he'll probably come back pretty close to 100% healthy after that 4-week injury reserve stay. But overall, just great game by the Rams. I think the Rams by no means lost this game. I think when you play this well week 1, especially in a place like Detroit against a really good team like the Lions, it's hard to count this as a loss, even though you do start with that 0-1 record. But nonetheless, the Lions just looked better. I thought the Lions might take a little bit of a step back this season after all the hype of last season, but judging solely off of this game, they really did not. They still look dominant. Jahmyr Gibbs looks like he might need to kind of reevaluate himself or kind of find his path better in that true rushing game, but he still got a touchdown for himself and did really good in the receiving game. And David Montgomery completely took over where Gibbs left off when it came to the true rushing game and was just running through the Rams defense left and right. The Lions passing game definitely took a step back, but their defense and their rushing game only kept improving. So sometimes you just take the good with the bad there. Overall, I think that this was probably the game of the week and the first overtime game of the 2024 season, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was really a good game. And David Montgomery, when it came down to when it mattered most in overtime in the trenches, the Lions took over. And David Montgomery took over as well by running the ball for 70 yards, not in one play, but for over 70 yards in the fourth quarter and overtime. And I believe he had both touchdowns. No, one was a field goal. He had the touchdown in overtime, the field goal to tie it. But he helped lead the pass back to get to the tying field goal. And another hats off to Cooper Kupp, who really reemerged as option number 1 in the LA Rams offense with over 14 catches and over 100 yards and a touchdown. It was really great numbers for Cooper Kupp. Those are past vintage Cooper Kupp numbers from his rookie and second year dominant performances when he won the Triple Crown of the receiving room. So it was really a good game by both teams. I don't like the overtime rules because the Rams never got a chance to answer the Lions. I think they should play the playoff style overtime from now on in regular season. I think that's how overtime will end up being, where both teams get a chance.
I did not know it was just playoffs. I was very confused by that until the announcers started saying
in playoff overtime, both teams get a chance with the ball, whether it's a touchdown or a field goal. In regular season overtime, if you get a touchdown on the first possession, it's over.
Sudden death.
And that's what the Lions did. They drove down there. The Rams defense was tired from already having to try to stop them from getting the game-tying field goal, and then they had to go right back out on the field and stop them from getting a touchdown. And without Aaron Donald, they realized that they were losing in the trenches, and it was easy pickings for David Montgomery to run right through that defense and for a Lions victory.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree. I think maybe not this year because they're not going to change anything mid-year.
Right.
But if we get a couple of overtime games this year that end like this one did, I think we start seeing some rule changes to a more across-the-board regular and postseason overtime with an opportunity for each team. But that was our first NFL recap of the 2024 season. Thank you all so much for watching and for all the support recently. Make sure you stay tuned in until tomorrow when we have our week 2 predictions. But until then, don't forget
to eat the W.